I'm going to quickly run through the tools and supplies that you're going to need in order to create these single roses. We do supply a kit. You are of course welcome to use your own supplies, but all of the weights and measurements that are given in the tutorial are based on the wools that we supply in the kit. If you've purchased one of our kits, then you will find that you've got a main colour. Now currently they are available in dusky pink, a wine or a bright red. You'll have the green for your leaves and calyx, and you'll have some white for your gypsophilia. You'll also find that there are some 20 and 28 gauged florist wires and a little pack of florist tape. The felting templates that we use in this tutorial in order to create the petals and the leaves and everything else is available separately. We've divided up the kit from the templates and the tutorial so that you can pick and choose the elements that you want to work with. The tools that you're going to need to create this project is a felting surface, a felting needle. You're probably going to need an awl, some pliers and some wire cutters. So with that all done, let's get on with our project. To make the main petals of the rose, you're going to take some of your main colour, and I use about 0.5 of a gram per petal, and you may be interested in this wonderful little scales. I use it all the time. It weighs out very small amounts. As you can see, I am 0.5 of a gram there, and it just helps with consistency. You can pick those up on eBay for a few pounds. The first thing I do is just pull off just a little bit, not very much, just a pinch, and I just keep that to one side just in case we get any thin spots, but nice and even. Stuff it into your template, grab your needle and just work very lightly around the edges. And with these templates you want to keep your needle very vertical. You don't want any of this kind of angle going on because you don't want to be hitting the sides of your template. All we're going to do is go very lightly over the surface, and I like to use a foam surface because you can actually feel the resistance when your needle hits the foam, and that's when you want to stop. We are just using the first few barbs on the tip of the needle. We're not using the ones that are up here. This is not what you want. Just nice and lightly let the needle do the work for you, and when you feel your needle hit that density of that foam, that's far enough. Nice loose grip. If you drive your needle through like that, then what you're going to do is get some real serious attachment going on the back, and all that's going to do is leave you with a constant fluffy surface. So take it out, turn it over, work the other side. Do bear in mind that different wools will give you different results. This is the wool that is in the single rose kit materials supply materials. It's the one that we do. It's a New Zealand carded bat, and it really does produce some very nice flat results. You can obviously use any wool that you prefer. It's one of the reasons why I've broken the kit up into a few different pieces, so you can buy the kit, the tutorial and the felting templates separately, and you can mix and match to suit what you want. So I'm just going in with a double multi-tool, turn it over, push it back down. The nice thing about these templates is they do give you very, very consistent results. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. There we go. And you don't want to be bringing your needle up too high. You want to keep the needle within the templates. These are all 15mm high, so they give you a lot of room to move about in there. Because if you bring your needle up too high, you do risk hitting the edges. So we're just going to work in there, turn it over, back down. I'm going to go back in with my single needle just around those edges. And then it's just a case of working this until you're happy with it. You can take it out, have a look at your edges. I can feel I've got a bit of a thin spot there. This is all quite nice and even, but there's a thin spot just there, so I'm going to put it back in my template. I'm going to take this little bit of extra. I don't think I need that much. Pull a little bit of that off. Let's put that in. Put it back in the template. Go back in with my single needle. Just felt that down. Turn it over. Once you've got the basic shape, it's just a case of refinement. Go back in. Can really feel this firming up now. All over the surface, and just keep working it. I'm going to just work my sides clear some of these little stray hairs. And again, when you're working the edges, you don't want to be driving your needle in very deep. If you do that, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to start creating indentations, which is great if you're doing leaves and things that you want, you want some little striations or some kind of pointy bits. But on this, we want a nice curve. We don't want any bits that are indented. So we're just using the tip of the needle. And if you're using a wool that is particularly hairy, you can take a pair of scissors and just snip off any wild stray hairs that aren't felting in very well. I'm just going to take it and give it a bit of compression between my fingers. It will fluff it up again slightly, but it really does help make it flatter. Just work around the edge. I'm using a 40 spiral needle. It's kind of my go-to needle. Put that back in the template. Really start filming it firming up now. Turn it over. There. Now I would probably go over this a little bit more and bring in a 42 spiral, which is a real finishing needle, and just polish all over. I mean, you take this to where you want it. There we go. And then you can get some very nice, consistent results by using these templates. Now for making the small single rose, we're going to be using 5 petals. The technique to make bigger roses is exactly the same. You just keep adding petals. You do the initial roll and then you add them individually around the outside. But we're going to go ahead and make the calyx. To make the calyx, the process is exactly the same as the petals. You're going to need, again, I'm using about 0.5 of a gram of the wool. And your calyx template, if you've bought them, will be thicker than the one I'm using here. As you can see, it's about 5mm thicker. The reason for that is the 15mm high ones are a lot better to hold for you, but these are a lot better for filming because you can see more of what's going on inside. So I will attempt not to stab my fingers whilst doing this. So 0.5 of a gram, and I just break off a bit when I'm doing anything that has petals, individual petals like this. Just pull off a bit, fold it over, get your needle, and you can use the other end for this and just put it in and then stab just very, very lightly. Very lightly. Remember, when it hits that surface, you want to be stopping. Now, there's no right or wrong way of doing these templates and filling them however you like. What I tend to do is, because I always tend to work better on this side, I just get the first one and pull it up and just leave it over there. And get another bit. And that way I'm not fighting with other bits of fluff in the same template while I'm trying to just define the starting shape, because sometimes this fibre can be a bit unruly. There we go. There's another one. Lift it up. And again. The best thing is not to overfill. You can always add in more. Just going to stuff a bit in there. Nice and lightly get that first shape, that first point. Oops. 4 or 5. You can just, you know, stuff the whole thing in and fill it up as you like. I like to do it this way because then I make sure that I get right out to these points before I start worrying about the middle part. Last one. You just want to make sure that all of these bits that you're doing just kind of leave a little fluffy bit right in the centre there. Okay, so now I've got my 5 little bits. What I'm going to do is just pop them back and just start working over the 3. Hold your template down. This is when the 15mm one really is a bit better. It does keep your fingers out of the way a little more. And then let's go back over. Add in this one. And then finally this one. Just work it nice and slowly. And don't feel that you've got to fill up the template. You know, keep it nice and thin. So that's all now back in. I'm going to get underneath, lift it all up, turn it over, go back in the other way. Let's grab my multi-tool. And with a shape like this, you want to really be careful with your multi-tool. I would choose probably to stick with a single needle, but I'm trying to be quick for video purposes. Turn it over, go in again, and now it's really starting to hold its shape in the template. You just felt one side, turn it over, felt the other side, turn it over, felt, and then refine it down. And in true Blue Peter style, here's one I prepared earlier. And then just go around your edges. Yeah, get some compression. And if ever you're feeling you're going a bit off track, just pop it back in the template. So there we go. Exactly the same as the leaf. Sorry, as the petal. So you're going to make 5 petals and you're going to make 1 calyx. These themselves actually can be made into little felted starfish for decorations, and all. You know, the templates are not just for one thing. You can really let loose with your creativity. Make all kinds of different things from them. Right, I'm going to leave that there. So 5 petals and 1 calyx, and now we're going to make the leaves. To make the leaves, you've got a couple of options. There's this shape that's in the kit, or in the template kit, I should say. You can, if you want to do a bigger leaf, you can just use one of the rose petals and just make a large big leaf. Or you've got the option of using this smaller one, which will create, or that you can use to create a little spray. And that's what I'm going to be doing, is creating a little spray. With using the templates, if you've got one of those little scales that I showed you earlier, another way of doing it is to make out one petal or one leaf and then weigh it to see how much wool you've used, and then you can make replications of that. And that's what I'm going to do with this one, is I'm going to just start off with just a small bit, and then I'll add more in as I go if I feel it needs it, and then when I'm done I'll weigh the whole thing and make duplications of it. So again, we just put the fibres in the template, start very lightly compacting them down, take it out, turn it over. Go over it some more. The process is exactly the same. And again, the one that I've got here is only 10mm high. The one you actually get in your template kit is 15mm high, so your fingers are more out of the way. And again, just as soon as you're feeling that resistance on the foam pad, that's as far as I'm going in. Take it out. And once again, this is just a case of working it until you're happy with it. If you're going to do a sort of little spray leaf arrangement, then you're probably going to want to do about 5 of these little leaf shapes. There we go, just working it around. Obviously I'm doing this fairly speedily. You can spend more time. Refining it. But what you're going to end up with are 5 of these. These are actually smaller than the template that you're getting. Same shape, but I was trying out little dinky ones. And that's, it doesn't attach to my finger, there we go. That's the sort of arrangement of leaf that we're going to be doing. I'm going to use those small ones so they don't go to waste, but it's exactly the same with these larger ones. I think visually these larger ones look better, which is why I decided to do them this size. Or like before, if you want to do the one big one, you can just do one big leaf, then take it out of the template, and you know, you can pull it and shape it a little bit, put some indentations in it so it looks a little more frilled around the edge maybe. But just work the leaf, whichever size you're going to do. Until you're happy with it. So I'm going to stop that one there. So you're going to make 5 of these leaf shapes if you're doing the small kind of spray leaf, or just one of the big petals if you're going to use a petal as a leaf. So there we go, there's 1, 5 more, and we're going to come back and start putting everything together. We're going to start building the leaf, and for that you're going to get your 28 gauge wires. These are very, very thin, and you're going to cut one of them into thirds, which will be, if you're using florist wires like I am, it'll be 10 centimeters each. And then the second wire, you're going to cut 10 centimeters off of the end, and then you'll have this longer one as well. So what we're going to do with this is very simply, and again there are lots of different ways that you can do this, so you may find a way that works for you better. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push the wire up in my little leaf and then out about halfway up, and then I'm going to fold this back down and create a little twist. So it just holds the leaf in there. Now you may not like this wire in the back, you can put a little bit of fluff over it, you can wire it a different way. There are no hard and fast rules. I'm going to do it like this. So that's how I'm going to do that one. And again, I'm going to push the wire in. If you're not finding that it's going in very well, just take your snips and just kind of snip on an acute angle, and it will give you a point which will hopefully go in a bit better. There we go. So about halfway up. We're going to fold that back down. And wind that around. Nope, this one doesn't want to play either. So again, I'm just going to take my snips and make a little point. You will find it goes in much easier. last one. I'm going to preemptively just snip this into a point. And there we go. That should be more than sufficient for keeping your little leaf ends on your wires. So you've got 4 of these now. And then we've got this long wire left. And this is the one that is going to form the point and then the main stem that the other ones are going to come off of. So I'm just going to make this point. Take this up. I'm going to give myself a good turn back. Wind it down. There you go. There's the main one. Then this is really simple. Now we take one of the short ones, decide where we like it, and if you do have these wires, then keep them all facing the same way. Now I'm just going to wind that first one down the centre. And these 28 gauge wires are very, very light. So there's our start. Then we're going to come in with another one on the same distance down from the top, same distance out, and we're going to wrap that one all the way down. And if you get some smaller, shorter wires which aren't behaving themselves, just go in with some pliers and encourage them. You don't want any sharp points. I've got one here. So I'm going to go in with my wire cutters. Just take that out. So that's the first 3 petals on. Then we're going to come down about the same distance again. Yeah, you can just eyeball it. Get a good anchor on your first wrap. Then wrap down to the end. And then your last one again, match it up with your other one. You want to keep this wrapping as sort of tight and as flat as you can. We will be covering it with a little bit of florist wire. So there we go. Just go in with your pliers and crimp out anything or flatten out anything. That wire's not behaving, so I'm going to go in. Just snip it out and then bring it round with my pliers. There's no pointy, jagged edges. And just use your hands. Go over it, just feel for anything that's sticking out. That looks pretty good. There, so we've got our leaf. So next we're going to carry on and build our rose, add our calyx, and then bring them all together. To build our rose, we're going to start off with our 5 petals. And again, there are no hard and fast rules about how to do this. You may have some that are slightly thicker than others. I tend to put those to the outside. And what I'm doing is I'm making a line of petals. I've got the thickest ones. These are just a little bit thicker. You'll be able to feel, there will always be a little bit of difference. And then I'm working to what feels to be the thinnest petal that I have closest to me. And we're going to overlap them ever so slightly, just on that sort of widest point. So have a little bit of overlapping. Then grab your needle and just on that edge, join them together. You can roll up the first one and sort of stab together that roll, then add your petals individually. We have found that this seems to be the most efficient way, but you find your own way. Okay, so we just lift that from the surface. And again, just going over, making sure we've got a good attachment. Okay, and what we're going to do is start nearest to us and just start rolling quite tightly. That's that first one. And then when you get so far, just a couple of little stabs just to help hold it in place. I'm going to roll a little bit more. And we are attaching, we're doing all the stabbing at the bottom, the point of the petal, up to about 1/3 of the way up. Roll it a little bit more. Make sure that as you come to the next petal, you're picking it up and taking it over. You want to make sure that all your petals are pretty much in line at the top. There's our next petal, so we're going to make sure we pick that up. And then over to our last petal. And these are just tacking stabs, they're not really felting, we're just getting an attachment. And then keep rolling it over until you come to the end and hold that, and then work that into place. You're going to want to felt right on that end. There, and now we've got the start of a nice little rose. And the petals, we can start sort of fanning out a little bit. Pull them apart. And because you've only, done some light tacking stabs down here, you need to do enough so that it holds it together whilst you're pulling it about, but that you can also pull them back apart if you need to and start again. So I've got this little swirl in the centre. I want to make sure that that's nice and tight. I'm going to use my needle. There we go. So I'm not happy about the placement of this one, so I'm going to take that one off. There we go. And I'm going to put this back on manually. So I'm going to overlap it. Attach it to the previous petal. Don't be afraid to pull things off if need be and redo them. So I'm going to felt around the bottom a little harder. That's better. So we are just doing a 5-petal rose, but you can make more petals and add on, as many as you like. I'm going to felt down this base now quite solidly. We're not going to move up past a third of the bottom of the petal because we want to be able to open these out a little more. And if you get to this point, you think, oh, I want to add another petal. Obviously you can. I'm going to open that back out a minute and just show you. So yeah, you can keep going and make as big a rose as you like. It's just going to add in that extra petal for demonstration. So this will actually be a 6-petal rose. There we go. I'm being quite... At this point I am using a good portion of my needle because I want it to felt down in deep. When you're working close to a surface, you want to use the tip, but when you're doing something like this, you can use most of the needle. A guide that you can use is your finger. So if you only want that much of the needle to penetrate, just put your finger right there, and then when your finger hits your project, you know that you're only going in that far. That might be helpful. There we go. Let me turn my... That's a 6-petal flower. You could add in a 7th, 8th, 9th. Depends how big you want it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to felt this edge lightly because I still want the definition. So what I'm going to do is just catch the inside so it still retains that definition as a petal, but I want it a little more attached, a bit further up because it's the end one. Same with this one, it's gone a little bit fluffy, so tiny tip of the needle just over the area to polish and refine, and then catch the inside of the petal just to hold it in place. There we go. Spotted a little fleck. There we go. Bend the tops back a little bit. So, happy with that. It's probably worth making a few extra petals when you're doing your first one, just so you get the hang of it. Just going to attach the inside of that, and let me see if I can get a real close-up of this. So this petal, I want this part attached. As you see, it's flapping about a little bit, so I'm holding it down, and what I'm doing is there's the edge of the petal, and I'm going just on the inside, catching some fibres and just in and out in the same spot, just using it to put in some anchor points. Okay, so we're going to run a wire through this now to form the stalk, or the stem rather, and then we're going to add our calyx and our leaf. We're almost done. In this section we're going to be making the gypsophilia, which are the little white flowers. For the single rose kit you will only need 9 of the individual stems, which will be 3 groups of 3. However, for those of you wanting to make larger bouquets, what I've included in this tutorial will take you right through making a full-size spray to enhance your designs. So we're going to be making some gypsophilia, or as I like to call it now, gypso-fluffia. It's a tiny little white flower, and it just really sets off a bouquet if you're making a bigger arrangement, or just a tiny little touch of it on something like a flower and leaf brooch just takes it to a whole new level. It just really sets it off. It is the simplest thing in the world to make. You're going to need some 28 gauge florist wires. These are 12 inches and I'm doing them in green, and you're going to cut these into 3. I'm using a piece from the previous one that I cut just to make it quick. Doesn't have to be exact. That one doesn't want to cut. There we go. So we've got some little pieces like that. This is the white carded merino bat, which we've got in the Etsy shop. And all you are going to do is pull off a pinch. And it really is just a pinch. Actually, it might be a little bit too much. There we go. Just a pinch. Roll it up in your fingers. Use your needle just to bring it in and bring it down a little bit into a slightly smaller fluff ball. Don't do this too tight and too small at this point. excuse me. So pop your wire through. Let me show you. Just pop your wire through so it's just sticking out the end. Grab a pair of small nose pliers, just grab that tip and roll it back on itself, then grab the whole thing and just roll it down once more. And what that is doing is catching and holding and grabbing all of the fibres in that little twist of wire in the top. So scrunch it down, then take your needle. Let me get a close-up of this. Get your needle and then just bring the fluff around. And it really doesn't matter if you can see a little bit. There you go. Little white fluffy top on a wire. Now, depending on what you're going to be doing, depends on how many of these you're going to want to be making. So I always do them in groups of 3, so you always want to make them in 3s. I'm going to make some more off camera and then I'm going to come back and we're going to assemble the whole thing together. Okay, so I thought I would just run through once more how to make one of these, just in case it didn't come out very well the last time I filmed it. You're going to take one of your wires, and these are the 12-inch floristry wires that have been cut into 3. You're going to grab a little pinch of your white fibre, and I suppose you could do this actually in any colour you wanted. Just roll it up in your finger, just a few stabs. Don't stab this down too tight to start with, you do need it a little loose, and then just push your green wire through the little ball of fibres. Grab your pliers and just roll it round and sort of crimp those fibres in there. Then take it back to your mat and just bring the fibres over where you've got an obvious green wire in the middle there. Obviously do be careful because now you do have a little wire loop in there, so nice and gently. There we go. There. Let's focus. There we go. Okay. As you can see, I'm making several, and I'm going to carry on making them until I've got enough to make a spray, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to arrange them all. Okay, as you can see, I've got a range of these made now, and what we're going to do is start to create them into a spray. The way that I do this, and there are no hard and fast rules, so feel free to diversify. I do them in groups of 3. So I'll take 3, I'll pick a centre one. Let me move this out of the way and then you can see it better. So I'll take one, get the second one and just set it off a little bit further down, and then just twist these together. Then get a third and bring that down again and slightly offset. And then twist that one and the first 2. And you want to make these stems as thin and even as possible. There you go. So get your little singles that you've made, put them into groups of 3, and then I'll show you how we then combine the groups of 3 to make the larger sprays. Okay, so we've started making the sections of 3, and then what we do is we join those 3 together to form sort of bigger sprays, and then these sprays you can join together to make even bigger sprays, and you can go on ad infinitum. It's entirely up to you with what you're looking to produce as your end result. This rose, for example, just has a tiny little spray, but it really sets it off. So in that case, a little goes a very long way. What I'm making at the moment are sprays for a very large bouquet. So I have a lot of these to do. Grab one of your sections of 3 and grab another one, and then just offset and wrap. And you'll find that as you wrap, this tail of wire will move down with you. Grab another 3. I quite like that one there. And this is just visually what looks appealing to you. I'm going to grab another one. I think that one can come down here. Because don't forget, you need to look at this from all sides. See how we've got quite a flat back to it. So that one will perhaps offset that way. Yeah, just make sure you look at it from all angles. Twist it round, so you've got more of a 3D sprig. And we basically keep going like this until you have a spray. And then this just keeps going. Oh, got one cool. There we go. Make up slightly bigger sprays like this, and then what we'll do is start adding these together. I think at this point I would probably bring in a centre wire. This is a 20 gauge. Yeah, this one's a 20 gauge, so maybe a 22 gauge. Just something that's a little more structural. You know, start with an end spray. And we'll just wrap that around. And you will get these tiny little wires that are poking out. So just come in with your pliers and really crimp them down. I'm going to be covering them once it gets to the main stem. I'm going to be covering this with florist tape. So then I'm going to come in, look at where I want the next one to be. Just wrap that around a few times. The wires are getting in a bit of a mess because I stuck it in the foam. It sort of bent them backwards on themselves, but you kind of get the idea. Like that. Don't forget, the other thing that you can do is you can wrap the wires in wool and wax them. Personally, I think for something like this overall, just the floristry tape on the main stem parts. So we get the next one, and I'm going to bring that in about there. So I'm just going to wrap. And if you find that this amount of wires is too heavy on your hands, then just make these sprays slightly smaller, so you're having to manipulate less wires in one go. But your pliers will be your friend there. So as you can see, move that out of the way. As you can see, that's starting to form a very nice sprig or spray of gypso-fluffia, and that's going to form part of a much bigger arrangement. We're going to attach the stem to the rose, and for this you want a 20 gauge wire. If you've got the kit, there'll be some 20 gauge wires and some 28 gauge wires. The 20 gauge wire is the thickest one. Wire sizes, like needle felting needle sizes, the higher the number, the thinner the wire or the thinner the needle. So this is 20 SWG, and what we used on our leaves was a 28 gauge. I will just grab a 28 gauge so that you can see the sort of the size difference side by side. So that's the 20 and that's the 28. As the main stem of the rose is the one that's going to have all of the, support all of the weight, then we're going to use a really good sturdy 20 gauge. You can use probably a 22. Right, so we're going to come in with our wire cutters on an angle and create a point. Then up the centre of our rose, straight up the centre. Oh, hang on. You'll feel it. There we go. Just take your time with it. So now we've got a nice wire straight up through the centre there. So bring the rose almost down to the other end, and then you're going to bend this back on itself. You want a point probably at least sort of halfway up, maybe a little bit more. So we're going to bend that over like this, and then we're going to push the wire back down slightly over, so that obviously it catches the middle, and this can be a little bit fiddly. You may find an awl will help. So we're just going to pull that down and out the bottom. So you can't see the wire, and it comes out almost at the centre there. And then what I like to do is just put in a single twist. Pull those wires straight together. And we're going to grab our calyx, and for this we will need an awl. And I'm just going to push that through the fibres just to make a little bit more of a hole. You can see I've got a nice clear hole there. I'm going to push that all the way down. There we go. And calyx on a rose. And then just going to wrap or twist these together as neatly as we can. The 20 gauge wires are really strong. I use them for armatures. So if you do find that these are a bit too heavy, then go to a 22 gauge. It will be perfectly adequate for this. So we've got our calyx. We're going to hold the rose upside down and attach the calyx. So for this, we're using a good portion of our needle again. And what I'm doing is I'm working up the calyx about 2/3 of the way up. Finding and keeping my shape as I go. But you'll notice with a lot of roses, the tips of the calyx isn't actually attached to the rose. You can, of course, attach the whole thing. It's entirely up to you. Let me get my ball out of the way. Okay. So upside down, I'm just joining it all the way around the centre. To begin with. Getting a really good fix on that centre part. Then working down each individual leaf. Making sure that that's attached. There we go. I think that's the last one. There we go. So nice attachment on the calyx. You can pinch and pull the tips so that they are more pronounced. And now we've got our rose and our calyx attached. From here, you can go a few different ways. Some of you may be familiar with the felter's wax that we sell, and what you could now do, you have the options, is you can wrap the wire, for example, this is very, very rough, but you can wrap it in wool and apply some felter's wax to wax the stem. And that way you've got a nice consistent stem with your calyx. Same for these. You could apply some wool. but we're going to go the route of the floristry tape. In your kit, you'll find some floristry tape, and it's really I can't explain how much you will need to do your rose, because it will depend how long you want your wires, whether you're going to have a short stub wire, which you're going to use it as a buttonhole. So you're going to need a bit of florist tape. And the way that this works, I'm going to start with the leaf. And let me just wind those wires together. It's very easy to tear, and it doesn't feel like much, but you hold the end and you stretch it, and now if you hear it, it sticks to itself. Getting it started is always the interesting bit, but hopefully as I'm on camera it will be kind to me. Overlap it so it wraps on itself, and then you wind it, hold it on a slight sort of downward angle, and you just wrap it so it's slightly overlapping itself. Get that out of the way, and then maybe I can show you better. So wrapping it nice and tightly. Don't overstretch it or it will break, but just work your way down. Work your way down your wire. I'm going to stop there. You can just pull it off. And this florist tape comes in lots of different colours. You can get it in white, black, brown. So it's quite good for doing claws as well. If you have a look on my YouTube channel, there is a free tutorial on making little bird feet. And one of the methods is to wrap the armature in brown or black floristry tape. So we've got our leaf mostly wrapped. This bit at the bottom is not a problem. Next we're going to wrap exactly the same process, but if you've been making the gypsophilia or gypso-fluffia to go with this spray, you're going to want to just wrap the end, so where all of the wires have joined, just down a little bit. So you've got them both wrapped in a bit of florist tape. And then we're going to wrap the main rose stem. So again, I'm going to take, this is going to be a longer piece, because we're going to start wrapping and then we're going to incorporate the leaf and the gypsophilia. So first we have to activate the florist tape. So we're just going to grab and pull so you hear that sort of noise. Wrap it as far up as you can. Get it attached on itself nice and tightly around the stem, and then get that angle and start bringing it down just a tiny bit excuse me, because we're going to bring in our leaf and our gypsophilia, and decide where they're going to go, what your arrangement's going to be like, because we want to use this piece of the tape to secure the wires at the bottom. So I'm just going to start with the leaf. I'm going to bring that in and just get a couple of wraps in place. Excuse me. So that it holds the leaf on there. Then we're going to bring in the gypsophilia. Decide where that's going to go in our arrangement. Bend these wires, it all helps. And then just wrap so that it encapsulates both and your main wire. Then just work it all the way down. Just sort out those crinkles. And this just adds a really nice finishing touch. Don't pull too hard, because if you pull too hard it will snap. It's not a problem if it does. Oh dear, I broke it. Just go back up ever so slightly. It will still stick to itself. So one wrap, catching over that end again, and carry on down your wire. And this is the point where you decide how long you want your wire. If you want it even longer than this, you know, just join a couple of wires together, make sure they're anchored. And then just wind down, keep going down as far. I mean, I've run out of tape there, but you could just keep going. This is going to be a short little spray for a single vase, so I don't want it too long. So I think I'm going to cut it off. Probably about there. And then just bring your felting surface back in if you want to just refine, have a look. I think that's good. Put that out of the way. And there you go. One very nice little spray with a rose leaf gypsophilia. Nice little Valentine's decoration for the table or as a gift. Make a nice little wedding buttonhole if you're thinking of doing your own flowers. They make a nice gift then, you know, it's not fresh flowers. They don't die. It's a nice little keepsake. Lots and lots of things that you can do with them. I hope you've really enjoyed this single rose kit tutorial, and I wish you all a very crafty day.